If you got some star players on your fantasy baseball team whose slow starts are making you sweat, you're not alone. But who should you really be worried about? Let's start with the reigning NL Cy Young Award winner and one of the top pitchers taken in all fantasy baseball. That's Sandy Alcantara. 4 starts into the season, 3 disastrous ones, and 1 complete game shutout. So just when it looked like he was back to old form, got hit pretty hard again his last outing. That brings his ERA to 5.84. Not what you were looking for with a second round, maybe third round pick. I will say, not just because of how great he was last year, but in general, let's calm down here because his numbers are mostly inflated by that one terrible start against the Phillies. His whip is still pretty good, 1.18. His velocity is not down. The strikeout numbers aren't great. The swinging strike rate is still pretty good. He's not walking batters. It's just a slow start. I mean, this happens. A couple of games, especially one really bad one, will make a pitcher season look worse than it really is. At this point, selling low would be the worst thing you could do. So hang on and just wait for him to turn it around. What about Aaron Nola in Philadelphia? Is there ever a season where we don't worry about him in April? It seems like an annual ritual. Known as kind of a slow starter. Now, there are some more reasons to worry here. If you look at the numbers, his strikeout rate at 20%, his swinging strike rate is 10.4%. That's his lowest since the second year in the majors. But digging a little deeper, ERA, kind of like Alcantara, almost 6, but his xERA, according to StatCast, is 3.64. That's significantly lower. Maybe a little bad luck mixed in here. Again, couple of bad outings. It looks worse early in the season. You can't do anything with Nola other than wait it out. We know he'll be fine by season's end. This is a guy who's been there, done that. Nothing going on here. Let's move on. I'll just come out and say I'm definitely worried about Alek Manoah of the Toronto Blue Jays. A young pitcher who, be kind of saying this from last year, you should expect some negative regression based on how good he was last year. And this is a guy who never was really even expected to be a frontline starter, but a lot of the peripherals suggested that he got a little bit of good luck last year, and it's all crashing down now. Last outing where he gave up 7 runs in one game, that inflates his numbers. But in 3 of his 4 starts so far, he didn't even make it through the 5th inning. Not inducing a lot of strikeouts. Even worse, got 16 Ks so far and 15 walks. That is an ugly ratio. You don't want to see that from one of your top starters. Normally, I wouldn't suggest selling low at this point. Maybe hope he has kind of a bounce back or a decent performance next time on the hill. But at this point, if there's somebody who's thinking that they're buying low and getting an advantage here, I would say do it because, again, I don't expect Manoah to put up anything near the numbers he did last year. Panic meter here, fairly high. I'm actually going to go all the way to a 4 out of 5. Now on to some hitters. Let's talk about a guy who got a lot of buzz, Francisco Alvarez, who was picked up a lot last week. Omar Narvaez out for a while. Give this guy a chance and see what he can do. Well, what he's done is a lot of nothing. Actually, I take that back. He has done a lot of swinging and missing. Only 1 hit in his first 15 at-bats and not a single walk. That's what you call bad plate discipline. Now, this really shouldn't be too surprising. Again, a player who's only 21 years old, and he's always had a lot of holes in his swing, which is why not everybody was really sold on him. Massive power for sure, but you know what happens with a lot of these sluggers, also a lot of big whiffs. Alvarez may turn it around eventually, but I'm not going to wait and find out. Again, if I did pick him up, which I did in a couple leagues, I'll be honest, he's on the bench or he's being dropped if it's not a keeper league. Mets are not one of those teams that can afford to be patient and let a young player just ride it out. They will make a move, and Alvarez could find himself back in the minors. How about another young catcher who's struggling? That's MJ Melendez, who serves both as catcher and right fielder for the Royals. Well, he's just coming off another 0 for 4 performance with a strikeout, so that brings his slash line to 150, 257, 267. Strikeouts definitely the issue here, up to a 38% strikeout rate on the season. I feel like Melendez is going to be kind of those all or nothing guys. Now, hitting higher up in the order than last year, prime spot to drive in runs, but you can't do that if you're not getting base hits and making contact. So maybe the pressure, maybe it's just working through it early in the year. He had a really strong season last year. You think he'd build off of it. It's a guy with some major league experience, so I think we have to be patient here. I'm definitely keeping him on my bench until that slump turns around. Encouraging sign is that he's got a really high exit velocity so far. The barrel rate is good. When he's making contact, he's squaring up the ball and hitting it hard. We just need that to happen some more. So a little bit of patience. Maybe we'll see the Melendez we were hoping for. Now, how about a player who's actually not playing too badly? So I'll tell you why you might want to be worried about Tyler O'Neill. Cardinals have been one of the best offenses in the majors since the season started. It's like everybody on their hits, which is the problem. O'Neill not doing too bad himself, hitting .278, couple home runs, 4 RBIs, 8 runs scored. Can't really complain about the production too much. But here's why you might be a little worried. Now that Lars Nootbaar is back off IL, he's going to get into the mix here, get some playing time. Alec Burleson, kind of a surprise here, has seemed to really settle into an everyday player and owns that left field job. And then you got Jordan Walker, who's playing right field. Nolan Gorman in the mix there for DH. And then there's Dylan Carlson, who's kind of that fourth outfielder, utility guy. There's a lot of mouths to feed in terms of getting in that lineup. So O'Neill, who had been playing every day, might get squeezed out of the lineup more than we'd like. I will say he's definitely worth holding on to. He, even in more limited at-bats, can get you some home runs and some steals. Only 1 steal so far, but still. I'd rather have a guy who's getting maybe fewer ABs on an offense like that than somebody who's hitting the top of the order, for say like Oakland. I think the best thing to do here is hold for now, but maybe temper expectations. Unless there's an injury, really we could see O'Neill maybe disappointing in terms of his projections. An outfielder who is disappointing is Anthony Santander in Baltimore. Kind of a nice late round pick in fantasy baseball drafts. Somebody who can kind of set in there as your third, fourth outfielder, utility player. Someone who can get you maybe 20 plus home runs, decent counting stats, and not hurt you in batting average. Well, he's definitely hurting you in batting average right now, hitting an even 200 so far. Only 1 home run too, so he's not making up for it by giving you power. But here's why I'm not too worried and set the panic meter a little bit low on this one. He does have 5 doubles, which I know, not too exciting, but doubles can turn into home runs. You know what? He's off to a slow start, and that seems to be his MO. Last April, he hit .226 before eventually warming up. The year before that, hit .194 in April. So you see what's going on here. Maybe he enjoys the warmer weather, just needs some time to really get into the swing of things. I'm holding tight here. Bench for now if you can afford to, but if you're in a league that's 12 teams or less, shallow enough, I'd take a flyer on somebody on waivers, get a little bit more production, and then when Santander decides he's ready to start hitting, you can put him back in your lineup. And here's a tough one. Tristan Casas of the Red Sox. Exciting young player, someone who has power, but also the hit tool that, he can help you probably across multiple categories and should be a fixture hitting at least in the heart of that order. Well, the first week, everything was fine, but then the slump hit, and it hit pretty hard. And by that, I mean he has not hit anything hard. Hitless in 7 of the last 8 games, bringing his average down to 135. Looking at the latest box score, 4 strikeouts, bringing his K rate up to 30%. Little surprising because this is somebody who, like I said, should be able to hit for average too, and not someone with a massive strikeout rate throughout the minors. He's starting to get the occasional night off in Boston, and you know what that can lead to. Now, I don't think he's going to get replaced by Bobby Dahlbeck or somebody else. They're going to let him work through it, but it won't be much longer before he starts hitting the pine more regularly. If you have Casas, I'm not going to drop just yet. It's still early. He's a young player, but I'm definitely benching for the time being. Give him another week or two, see what happens, and then we'll make a decision. Can't decide whether you should buy or sell certain players right now to maximize their value? Check out my latest trade video with advice.